Hi, I'm Yannick from JW Solar. We're just going to take a quick look at the new version 6 of this Solax app, which is due to be released in the next couple of weeks. This is a beta copy, so we can't expect it to go very, very smoothly, but I'd just like to show you what is and what isn't included and the feedback that I've given and the way that Solax have responded to that. I'll just load up the app here, and as you can see, it's very quick to populate the flow diagram. Now, this was a bit of a bugbear from the last version, the version 5. Sometimes the flow diagram either didn't populate or it was very slow to load. So that is a vast improvement on the version 6. So I'll just get rid of that and we'll do it again. So the app's completely closed, and when you load it, it loads up and populates very quickly. So that's definitely a plus point. I'll give you a little tour of the interface. At the top, we've got the site. Now, Solax have changed the terminology of site to planned. Apparently, this is for commercial customers. They prefer planned, as in power plant, as opposed to site, location. I prefer site. Plants to me is either earth-moving machinery or green things that grow, but that's their choice. Underneath that, there's a word, and I can't really read the word, and that's been fed back to Solax. It's written in green on grey, and the background's also grey, and it doesn't make it easy to read. The background here changes depending on the weather. So it's yellow when it's sunny, and as you can see, there's rain on the background, and it's grey outside, so it changes to grey. So things become easier or more difficult to read on the screen depending on the weather, which also kind of nice idea, but it's not really working in these circumstances, because the most important thing about the app is that you can read the information that you want to see. Underneath there, minimum and maximum temperature and the weather. There isn't a weather card on this app, but it's just giving you a quick overview of what should be important. In the top right corner, there are these 4 icons. The left top icon is alerts and messages. That's for alarms and messages from the system. The top right icon is to add either a plant or a device. Underneath here is the refresh rate of the flow diagram underneath. So as it goes round, it'll refresh when it reaches 12 o'clock. This is a 10-second refresh dongle, so the power flow diagram is going to refresh every 10 seconds. Next to that is a change icon, and you can change the power flow diagram into a house flow diagram, which looks a little bit like this. Same thing, different layout. Get a picture of a house. The battery's down here, the load of the house is here, the solar panels here, and the grid import and export over here. There isn't a huge amount that's very exciting going on at the moment, because it's 7:20 in the evening. And I'll just go back to the flow diagram for now. The flow diagram is an improvement. It's okay. I have some questions about the graphics and the reason for using them. Many people have asked for more information on this screen, like battery temperature or splitting information from the MPPT trackers up here. Now, there are technical constraints because this is for the whole site. For example, if you had 4 inverters with 4 different battery banks connected, which battery would it show the temperature from? Or if you had 4 inverters with 8 MPPTs and 8 solar arrays, which MPPTs would you split out? So because it's made for residential single inverter sites, but also commercial sites with many inverters, it's not possible to split that information out on this particular power flow. And that's the reason that Solax keep it separate, and it needs to be in the device detail page rather than on the main energy flow. Scrolling up from there, if we just go up past the energy flow, essentially the interface is broken down into these rectangles or squares, and I quite like the idea, but I don't actually think that Solax have actually latched on to the good idea yet. So I'd quite like that these to be rectangular or square shaped, and they take up tiles as such, and then as they add features they can add tiles, and we can just scroll. For example, there isn't a PV analysis, or maybe even a tile for the most common inverter settings, things like that. So you could add them on the front page, and adding those tiles, or the choice to add the tiles, could definitely be a development progression. Now the interface does look an awful lot better on my mobile phone screen. It's taken some time to update on the computer over the Wi-Fi connection. So the experience is actually much better on the mobile phone. My phone is also 8 years old. It's running Android 10, I think. So it really will be the worst experience you could have with the app, because the phone is very, very old and demented. The first one is all about earnings. So this is essentially where you set your tariff, and it monitors how much solar is generated, where it's used, how much is exported to the grid or imported, and works out how much savings. In general, there isn't anything to click on except the tile. So all of this tile does the same thing except the question mark, which gives us some information. Earnings are an estimate based on time of use, tariffs for reference only. All right. So all the rest of the tile just goes to the same place. So if I just open that, the earnings relies on the tariffs to be able to work it out, and I don't have a tariff set up, mainly because I'm on Octopus Agile and it's impossible to put tariff data in there. Too complicated, too time consuming. It's just not feasible. So I've left the tariff information empty. So to enter a new tariff, there's this button in the top right corner, which doesn't look like an enter button, but it is the tariff button, and I think it needs to be add, but I've fed that back. So if I go into edit tariff, I can go and choose a currency here, which I'm going to pick GBP, something that I've fed back to Solax, that all the dialogues and the data entry system need to be consistent, and I'm hoping that they'll eventually take notice of that, because if you need a good intuitive app that's easy to use, that's a nice user experience, then the app really needs to be consistent, and I'm working very hard for them to take that on board. After that, you can choose whether you want a customized tariff or automatic, and you can also select whether you're setting the tariff as a export tariff, which is to grid. I'll get that changed to export, and an import tariff, which is from grid. Okay, again, I'll get that changed to import and this to export. A customized tariff is one where you can select a fixed tariff or a TOU tariff, and I'm just not going to do that at the moment. I'm going to take a look at what's more interesting, which is doing it automatically. Now, here you can select a region of the UK, for example, and a handling fee is something that we don't necessarily have, but it's a way of like entering what they call a transport fee. It's essentially what is a standing charge in the UK, but it's per kilowatt hour instead. So I'll just enter 0.1 as so that's 10 pence per kilowatt hour. It's just something to put in there. You don't have to put anything in. Once you've done that, you can see that it gives you a graph of the tariffs, and you can also scroll through the graph from side to side to see the price at that time. Now this is the standard Nordpol, I don't know, purchase rate or something, and it's not what any residential or commercial premises actually use for their tariffs in the UK. So the data that it puts in automatically, I think, is useless, because nobody uses it. So the idea here is to get the Octopus Energy, at least Octopus Energy rates in there, because I know there are an awful lot of solar customers using Octopus Energy, and then they'll probably add the big six after that, but we're going to start off with Octopus Energy as a test. Up here you'll select Octopus Energy as your energy provider, select the tariff that you're on, and it'll fill in the tariff and then work out the prices from that. You can also see the actual tariff, the data, and what times they are. So for me, again, I'm on Octopus Agile. This is useless. I don't think it'd be useful for anybody as it is, because I don't know who's buying at the at the Nord Pole rate. I've submitted the specification for Octopus Energy integration, and that should be, fingers crossed, famous last words, ready in version 6.1, which is in August time, at least ready for testing in August. So that's something positive to look forward to. So yeah, there'll be nice tariff graphs on here. When you get any of the graphs in the app, it's got the options at the bottom down here, so you can switch on the series if you want to, just to narrow down what it is you're looking at, so as not to confuse it with something else. So this is just the total earnings. You can also turn the whole graph landscape, and this really helps. So yeah, when you turn it landscape, it's much easier to read, and also the graphs let you zoom in and out, which is also a really good feature. When there's a lot more information, especially inverter information, you can zoom in and out. And obviously hovering or clicking over any of the series tells you more detail on it, which I'll show you more about later. On to battery analysis. So this is an improvement. Again, I would really like, for my aging eyes, the font size to be a little bit bigger, especially underneath there on the phone screen. It's a 6-inch screen and it's just too small for me to read. So I'd appreciate a slightly bigger font there, but maybe that's just my preference. So yeah, much bigger SoC, 36%, we can see that, and the estimated kilowatt hours left in the battery. So I've got 6 kilowatt hours left. So underneath, it's also got the state of whether it's charging or discharging or idle, and also the estimated remaining hours to empty. So at the rate that it's discharging, the 6 kilowatt hours will last me 19 hours, which is probably about right at 300 watts. Please bear in mind that this is the battery for the whole site, okay? So it's all your batteries for all the inverters on the site added together. There can't be any specifics of temperature or anything else to do with volts, amps, because it wouldn't know which battery to choose that from. Okay, so it's an overview of the whole site. If you want more information than that, then you need to go into the device detail, which is the battery for a specific inverter for that site, or plant as they've called it. Okay, let's have a little look at the battery analysis page. So if we go into there, bearing in mind there's a little delay from the phone to the screen because it's streaming it over Wi-Fi. At the top there's a date selector, so you can pick any day that you like. Okay, so it's only a day, it's instant information, and then confirm, and it'll draw a graph of the battery power, which is the watts, the load on the battery, either positive or negative, and the SoC. Again, you can switch the series on or off to see one or the other, and also zoom in and out on areas that you want to see more detail of, and show the information on the screen. So you can see there it's taking 7.5 kilowatts from the battery, SoC, the state of charge 32%. I actually really like the zoom because I struggle with some of the others that don't zoom. Again, maximizing it to full screen, you can do that as I showed you before. So when you enter in here, bear in mind there isn't a huge amount of information because it's site-wide and not battery specific. Okay, let's have a look at the yield today and consume today tile. There's only one place to click on here. It's showing the yield information and consumed, and I know that most of you will be interested in how the yield is split up and how the consumed data is split up. So this is just an overview. We need to know the calculations of those. If I head into the tile, we get energy analysis, and underneath that you've got whether you want to select by month, by year, or by total, and it draws the graph and gives you the total yield and total consumption underneath. It works well, and the interface is really quite good. The graphs, they have coloured the graphs in underneath the lines, which I do find more confusing to read, especially if some of the colours are similar. So you'll see PV and inverter. You almost won't be able to see the difference if I just put those on the screen. So there's kind of light yellow and lightish yellow and slightly lighter yellow. And what I wanted to do was make sure that these were just line charts instead of filled in under the line, because I think it's much clearer to read. So the options for the graph are PV, inverter, battery SOC, battery charging, 2 loads and 2 grid. And there's also a generator option which I won't be using. Now this is quite interesting. Today it has said there's 19.2 kilowatt hours of yield there, and my actual yield today, where is it? If I have a look in my Home Assistant system, my yield is actually 12.5 kilowatt hours. That's what I call yield. Yield is solar generation. That's what we need separating out, is the solar generation. Okay, and you can see it's 12.5 there on my Home Assistant system. Yesterday was 17.6. The day before was 44.5. Now there isn't anything that reflects just the PV generation until we switch to the month view. Now the month view has generation for each day, and if I just zoom in slightly so you can see that, and you can see that's highlighted now is PV 12.5. okay, and also if you look here on the Home Assistant tab, you can see that the PV generation was 12.5. So it is separating out the PV generation from the loads to and from the battery, not just combining it all into a yield figure, which is very useful. If you go one day behind, it's got 17.6 as the PV generation, and again on Home Assistant it's 17.6. The day before that 44.5, and again on Home Assistant you can see it's 44.5, and that is purely the solar generation. This is information people have been asking for a long time, and I still think that Solax need to have a generation figure on the screen, and definitely a solar analysis tile, for example, on the dashboard, and that is something that's coming, so keep your eye out for that. But it is definitely a plus point that the PV generation figure is shown separately. Now you can scroll up from here, and we've got a list of, let's just get rid of the Home Assistant stuff. So we've got a list of the energy flow figures at the bottom, which is the yield and how the yield is broken down, and then we've got the consumed and how the consumed is broken down. Now again, you can see here that a yield does not state PV generation, and that will be added, but there's a complication in that it requires every inverter to have a firmware update to be able to add that into this list. They're working on that. That's probably going to be version 6.1. At the moment, this is how it's going to be released. In version 6.1, the PV should be separated, and there'll also be more detail of how much energy has flown to and from the battery, to and from the grid, from the panels, and to the loads, separated out to make the entire yield figure or the entire consumed figure. So we can look for more interesting breakdowns of that in the very near future. One point to make is that only inverters at G4 or above will be compatible with the new firmware. So if you have something older than that, then some of these figures won't appear. But if you have a G4 or above with the latest firmware, these figures will appear. The next tile down here is the environmental benefits. So them telling you how much CO2 you've saved, how many trees you planted, and how much coal is saved, depending on your solar output. I don't know if it's interesting. It's not particularly front screen material for me, but I'm sure quite a lot of people like to see it as a summary. So that's all that screen is, and you can download it and print it and feel proud that you're doing something for the planet. There isn't really anything else to see on there. Down at the bottom of the screen is the usual home menu. So In version 6 we've got Home, which is this screen, that's your main dashboard. Device. So up at the top of the screen it's the same. We've got the planned, which you can select if you've got more than one site, and this device list will change. The status of operation, which is normal, and at the top right that's how you add a device. So whether you're adding a charger, dongle, inverter, whatever, that's where you want to go and add. And there are two tabs. One is a device tab and then the other is an intelligent tab. Now, we did have a bit of a conversation of what's going on the intelligent tab, because at the moment if you click on there is only TOU, which stands for time of use, but there will be more intelligent offerings from Solax which are going to be added here as tiles in the usual way, and I'll show you a little bit more about TOU later on. So on the device tab, let's go and have a look at some inverter details. If you are a residential customer with one inverter, you will only have one inverter on here. If you have a site with many inverters, there will be more tiles for you to click on. Okay, let's have a look at one of the device tabs. So just clicking on there, it's a pane at the top for device information. I've asked for the generation of the G4 to be added, whether it's 4.1, 4.2, because I get asked that about 159 times a week. Remote settings here looks exactly the same as it did before. Backup password there, again it looks the same as it did before. In fact, you'll notice that the whole screen is identical to the version 5 of the app. All that's happened is the colour scheme has changed. So all the graphs are the same: inverter statistics, power statistics, battery information. It's all exactly the same as version 5 with the battery status and history data. This is going to be in version 6.1 or 6.2 with all the extras that we've requested. It actually isn't bad at the moment. None of this information can be on the front page because it's inverter specific rather than site specific. So it actually needs to be within each inverter's section. Everything works in the same way as it did before. You get a time and date to select, and then you can pick what you'd like to see on the graphs, or two of what you'd like to see on the graphs, which separates the PV1 and the PV2, which is the MPPT trackers, whether you want to see watts or voltage or current, so you can see those independently for a particular day. And also the yields and the consumption, feed in, there's all sorts, EPS, frequencies, meter 2. Anything that you'd like on the graph you can choose two of. They intend to get the revisions out fairly quickly. I just hope that they can not introduce bugs as they go. So this is where you also see the battery temperature on there. At the moment inverter temperature is not available, and again that's a request for 6.1, 6.2 when this gets its overhaul. Yeah, other than that it's just about the same. The battery status and battery history data, they actually almost display exactly the same information, so one of them is redundant. But other than that, it's the same as version 5. Now, if you haven't used the facility on the app before, it comes up with instructions of what's where. I don't really agree this should be necessary, but it's a good idea if you've never used it before, just to have a look. The apps really should be intuitive. You shouldn't need to learn how to use them or go and look for answers. Things that you need when you need them should be on the screen, and that is the true definition of a good user experience in an intuitive app. They haven't quite got there yet. So in summary, all in all, it's an improvement. It's a definite improvement. There are things there which have been requested. They are listing. Everything seems to move a little bit slowly. Obviously, we're not the only priorities that they have, so development time does seem to take some time. I agree there's no excuse for a PV manufacturer not to have this essential data available that we've requested, but there are technical issues and they are working on it. The software hasn't been Solax's strong point. The hardware definitely is their strong point. It seems to be very robust and reliable. It's actually good that they're working on the software, and this app has shown quite a lot of improvements. Thank you very much for listening, and hope some of that information has been useful. If you're not on the Facebook group, you can join Solax Support UK. or Solax installation for the international group. Thank you very much.